I also want to welcome everyone. Welcome. I do want to make one more point and then begin with the actual study of the 5th chapter, but this should be much more of a discussion. You know, we've said this many times, but the word in Hebrew for learning and for teaching is the same word, because you can't really learn if you don't teach, and you can't really teach if you don't learn. So there should be an open discussion. So if you have any questions, comments to make during the class, please feel free to speak your minds. We encourage that very much. So this class was started, when? 2 years ago? 3 years ago? 2 years ago now. A brilliant idea, and that is that we should be studying Rabbi Stenisalz's works, because Rabbi Stenisalz 2 years ago had a stroke, and his speech is still not healed, and maybe by actually verbalizing his words, we'll be reviving that speech in a spiritual way. So we began this class hoping that indeed his words that we are studying are almost rebooted within his mouth, within his voice, within his speech. And we hope that through our learning of his words, God will bless him with a full and speedy recovery. And having said that, I do want, as we've done that for the past few weeks, I do want to begin with a special psalm for the full and speedy recovery of Rabbi Stenisalz. And then we'll go directly to his words on chapter 5. But this is Psalm 45, a psalm that speaks of speech and of the healing of speech, which is what we want, so that Rabbi Stenisalz can continue to write, continue to teach all of his brilliant teachings. Psalm 45, I'm going to say it in Hebrew, and then we'll go to the study itself. Amen. Thank you. All right, let's dive right into chapter 5, which is the chapter of Torah. As Gila mentioned, we really delved into other big themes like holiness, the soul of man, and so on. This chapter is the chapter of Torah in which Rabbi Stenisalz will expound on not just what Torah has to say, right? 5 books of Moses have to say, but really why Torah? Why was the Torah given to the Jewish people? What does the Torah in fact stand for in this world? Why is it so prominent in Jewish life? It's interesting, but I think one of the great things that separate Judaism from other religions is that we really relate to our text as holy text. The mere act of studying a text is a holy act. In other religions, you study a text in order to derive something, some type of action, some type of behavior from the text. Here, the study itself, even if you don't derive anything from it, the study itself is considered to be holy. And I think it's something that's very unique to Judaism, and of course, Rabbi Stenisalz will expound on that too. But let's begin by really reading his words. If there's any volunteer that wants to read, please do so. Yes, Margot, please. Again, we're on page 65 here. Right. The Torah itself, therefore, is divine. That doesn't just come from heaven. I love the way he put it, but it is heaven. It's interesting, and that's why the word Torah can be translated. But just like other Hebrew words, the word Torah has actually many meanings. The word Torah, some say, come from the word light, the word or, which means light in Hebrew because it shares the light of Hashem. Other people say that the word Torah really comes from the word teaching, hora'ah. That's because the Torah is there to give us lessons on how to live, on life in general. Some say that the word Torah actually comes from a whole other word, the word har, or mountain. And that's because the Torah stands as a mountain of teaching, of light to our world. Some say that the word Torah comes from the word hara, or hirayon, which means pregnant. And that's because it's a book full of blessings that we have to bring to life. That's the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria says that. So the word Torah has no translation. It means so much. But what the greatest meaning of the word Torah really is what Rabbi Stenisalz is explaining here, that it is itself heaven. That's almost, dealing with heaven itself. That's why we respect the Torah so much. The Torah scroll is, I think, the item that's most respected in Judaism. One can't just open a Torah scroll if they feel like it. You really need to come to the Torah with reverence. You have to wash your hands. You have to open it only if you really need to open it. The Torah scroll itself can't be touched. If you have to touch it, you should rather touch it with something else, because it's considered to be a holy book. It's again the most respected item in Judaism for that reason. But the reason is not just that it's a part of heaven. What does that mean? What Rabbi Stenisalz says that the Torah is heaven. I think what this really means is that it's best described in the first word. The Talmud teaches that, and Kabbalah expounds on that. The first word of the Ten Commandments. The first of the Ten Commandments is Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am God, your Lord. And Kabbalah teaches that Anochi, the word I am God, your Lord. Anochi is actually a word that carries the initials of 4 Aramaic words. Ana Nafshi Ketavit Yahavit, which means I, my soul, have written and given. What does that mean? And what God was telling us by giving us the Torah Mount Sinai and delivering that first commandment, He was telling us that I'm not just giving you a book of teachings. I'm giving you my soul. I wrote my soul in here, and that's what you're getting. And therefore, when we study Torah, it's considered to be a mitzvah because it's really the ultimate way to connect to God. Because by studying Torah, you're not just connecting to some teachings, some good advice on life, but you're really connecting to the soul of God. It's a connection of soul to soul. And there's no greater connection than that. That's why the Jerusalem Talmud has a beautiful line, and I've seen it express itself in so many ways. I'm sure you've heard stories that connect to this line, but the Jerusalem Talmud has a beautiful line that says that everyone should study Torah, even the ones that the Jerusalem Talmud calls sinners. Again, by the way, the word sinner is not an English, it's not a Hebrew word, it's not a Jewish word. We don't believe in sin. That's a different discussion, but just to give you a glimpse into it. But the word sin in Hebrew is chet. Chet doesn't mean sin. Sin is a very Catholic, very Christian concept. The word chet in Hebrew really means to miss the mark, right? I think we spoke about this once. That's because when you're not following God's ways, you're actually just deviating from the right path. You're missing the mark. It's not like you're becoming impure, which is the connotation of the word sin. But in any case, so it says even the sinners should study Torah. The Jerusalem Talmud says so. Why? And then it explains because Hama'or sheba yachziro lamutav. The light of the Torah will bring a person back to the good ways of life, to goodness, lamutav. When you study Torah, something happens. There's a connection there. There's a spark that's ignited. Why? Because it's not just studying a text, raw words, but it's studying the soul of God. When you encounter that soul, it triggers something. I think that's why I even as a rabbi, until today, and I'm sure all men can speak to that. But when you receive an aliyah, I get nervous. Now, why would I get nervous? I know the words, I know the blessing. I think that's because the Torah does something to a person. I think when you study Torah, again, there's a light that's sparked. There's an ignition there. So the belief is, and Maimonides speaks a lot about this, but the belief is that God gave us the Torah, gave Moses the Torah Mount Sinai. He gave the 10 Commandments, and then he stayed there for 40 days and 40 nights to receive the rest of the Torah. Yes, and then, but that's when he wrote it down too. So you received it orally and wrote it down. Okay. And then he gave us the Torah after coming down from the mountain. Well, he first broke the tablets and then came back up. And then on Yom Kippur, he gave us the full version of the Torah, the second time he came down. That's right, for 3,320 something years. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's the belief. And I think that archaeological findings these days are consistent with that. Mm-hmm. The Dead Sea Scrolls are consistent with the scrolls that we use today. And even there was a tefillin, pair of tefillin found. You know, in the tefillin you have scrolls of passages from the Torah. So you had the oldest tefillin the phylacteries that were found in Israel are 2,400 years old. Wow. And have the exact same passages as the passages that you find in the Torah today. A lot of it is faith also, because you can't really go back 3,320 years ago. But I think the greatest fact we have, the greatest proof, we have, is that as opposed to other religions, this was a massive revelation of God. Mount Sinai, the giving of the Torah, witnessed by at least 2.5 million Jews. Some say there were 3 million Jews. Some say even more. But at least 2.5 million Jews. And those Jews passed the Torah on to the next generation, and to the next generation, to the next generation. And no one, and Jews love to argue, but no one for thousands of years ever questioned the authenticity of the Torah. It was passed on from generation to generation to generation until, in the later generations you found some questioning. I think it's just because we're so far removed from the actual source. But 2.5 million Jews didn't think of questioning the authenticity because they saw it right there and then. And they passed it on. And they passed it on other religions that are based on one human being. That's much harder to prove that it's authentic, because if that one human being was a little off that day, then it could be problematic. But here we have the Torah that was given in front of 2.5 million Jews. So that's to answer your question. But I want to go back to the point of Rabbi Stenisalz, and that is, again, that it's not just that we're studying text, but we're studying actually the soul of God. And I want to emphasize that point, because really it is therefore a holy act. I think that sometimes we forget about that, but I've seen it so many times that when people start studying Torah, incredible changes begin to happen in life. Positive changes, of course. And I have no doubt that that's because of the power of Torah, the soul of the Torah. And there's many stories like that. The story that comes to mind is a story from the Talmud itself. Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan were two great Talmudic scholars who had a very interesting relationship. Reish Lakish was actually a bandit. He was the head of the mafia of the days. Think about it that way. And one day Rabbi Yochanan was swimming in a river in Israel, and he sees this bandit with tremendous strength being able to jump from one side of the river to the other. He was like an Olympic long jump runner. What is it called? Right? Where he was able to land from one side of the river to the other. And thank you. And Rabbi Yochanan saw that, and he said to him, "Wow, you have so much strength. Chelcha leoraita." That's what the Talmud says. Your strength should be used towards Torah. Now, Reish Lakish said to himself, maybe I have a deal going on for me here. Rabbi Yochanan was a very handsome man. And so he says to Rabbi Yochanan, well, before we even go there, where my strength should be channeled, do you have a sister? Rabbi Yochanan says, yes, I have a sister that's even more beautiful than me. Reish Lakish says, I'll make a deal with you then. I'll go and study Torah if you promise me that I can that you'll match your sister with me, and I'll hopefully be able to marry her. Rabbi Yochanan says, we have a deal. Reish Lakish went and studied Torah. And the words of the Torah transformed him completely. And he became one of the great scholars of the generation just through studying Torah. Again, that encounter of soul to soul. Eventually, he did marry Rabbi Yochanan's sister and became, therefore, brother-in-laws. And unfortunately, the end of the relationship, or the end of the story, is very bitter. Because Reish Lakish, I'll complete the story for you, even though, again, we're deviating. But Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan studied together for many years, and Reish Lakish would ask 24 questions each time he had a class with Rabbi Yochanan. At least 24 questions. You see the importance of questions. That's why I want to hear at least 24 questions here from people. But at one point they were studying about arrows, whether specific arrows can become impure. Because what is considered what can become impure according to Jewish law is a finished product. So with speaking about arrows, whether they consider to be a finished product or not, if they are considered to be a finished product, then it can become impure. It's a halakhic discussion in the Talmud. And Rabbi Yochanan at one point tells Reish Lakish, why are you asking me these questions if these arrows can be considered an unfinished product or a finished product? You would know. You were once upon a time a bandit. You dealt with these arrows all the time. And Reish Lakish was so offended by that comment, he said to Rabbi Yochanan, but that's my past life. Why are you reminding me of that? And he was so bitter, he was so hurt that he died from pain. Rabbi Yochanan was so hurt that he hurt his student, that he died from that hurt a month later. And that's the end of the story of the beautiful love story with Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, which also teaches many other lessons of how careful we have to be with our words, and how Maimonides learns the lesson. He turns it into a law, that one is not allowed to remind the past of people that may have been negative. If you know someone that has changed in life, that has progressed, that has done teshuvah, you're not allowed to remind him or her of their past based on this story. But in any case, Reish Lakish encountered Torah and it changed him because the soul of God ignites your soul. Anyway, that's what Rabbi Stenisalz is saying here in this opening paragraph. Any questions, any comments before we move to the second one? Okay, let's continue. I want 24 questions today, remember.
Well, you have 3 of them already.
All right, good. Are you counting? Good. All right. This perception of the nature of Torah. Does anyone want to continue? Please, Diana, please. Right. So this is a very profound thought, but what Rabbi Stenisalz is saying, of course, quoting the Talmud, that before creation, God looked into the Torah and made the world accordingly. Or God designed the world based on the words of the Torah. Why? Because really the Torah was given to this planet, the planet Earth, was given to us here below. And therefore the Torah is intrinsically connected with the world because it must be applied to the world. Otherwise it wouldn't have been given here. It would have been given to the angels. But it wasn't given to the angels. It was given here to us in this world so that it could be applied to the world. And therefore the Torah and this world are really one. And every aspect of this world, therefore, is essentially connected to the Torah. And we must, in a way, reveal that connection in every aspect of this world. And therefore, I think the Torah speaks really of everything. Of course, the Talmud expounds on what the Torah means, the intentions of the Torah, and so on. But the Talmud, for example, speaks of every topic under the sun, from biology to anatomy to zoology, to you name it. Why? Because we really believe that the Torah can be applied to every aspect of the world. And I think that's part of the reason, we live in Arizona here, and it should flatter us, because God gave the Torah where? In the desert, just like here in Arizona. So here we're more susceptible to receive the Torah, as opposed to New York City, for example, even though it's called New York, but this should be the New York. But now, why did God give the Torah in the desert? Again, to tell us that the Torah can't be confined to any city, to any type of population. The Torah really belongs to everyone. It's there to make the world grow, every aspect of this world grow, the openness of the world. It should spread as much as possible. And that's why, again, this intrinsic connection. I do want to go further, but go ahead, Linda. It's a good question, an excellent question. I think that what Rabbi Stenisalz is saying is that we have a limited knowledge, a limited vision on life and on the Torah too. That sometimes we understand a certain passage of the Torah to mean this or that, but it means so much more. So it shouldn't be limited by just the way of our understanding. But we should know that every part of the Torah, every word, or even every letter of the Torah stands for so much more than what we can see. On the individual. We as individuals should be cautious on how we relate to the Torah. You remind me, there's a beautiful law that's happened to us twice in the history of Congregation Bet Tefillah. But so every letter in the Torah has to be wholesome, right? Has to be perfectly written. If there's a letter that's damaged, the entire Torah is no good. It has to be fixed before you can use the Torah once again. You can read from it once again. It's happened to us twice, as mentioned, that we were reading from the Torah, and then one of the letters seemed damaged. Now, if it is damaged, we can't really, even if you're in the middle of a Torah service, you can't continue to read from the Torah. You have to go get another Torah from the scroll. But if you have a question whether it's damaged or not, what do?
Call a child.
You call a child. That's what we did. You remember that.
There.
You called a child.
One of your kids.
Yeah, so you called a child, and you asked that child, please read this letter for me. What is it, an Aleph, or is it a Yud, or is it whatever you think it might be? And based on the child's opinion, we decide whether the letter is damaged or not. If the child is reading the letter as it should be, then we can continue to read. If the child is reading the letter as it should not be, obviously you notice that it's damaged, then we too should consider the Torah to be damaged, and we should go and find another Torah to read from. Now, what does this mean? It also, on the most practical level, Rabbi Stenisalz is saying here, is that, you see, we have our own limited view of looking at the Torah, the most pragmatic way. right? Sometimes you need the view of a child, which is so pure and innocent, to enhance your view. And so that's the caution. That's where it should come from. Also on that level, and of course on the understanding level too, right? Understanding the Torah is not always an easy thing. The ethics of our fathers teach us that one should not make the Torah as a kardom lachpor ba. That's what it says, which means for self-interest. You can't use the Torah for your self-interest. You have to be very cautious about that. I think that's what you're saying. The Torah is the soul of God, and it must be treated that way. And the way we understand it is the way we should understand it the way God wants us to understand it, not just the way we, maybe selfishly. I do know that Rabbi Stenisalz was very, very involved in the English translations of his book. He went over every word. In a way, that's a beautiful way of putting it. I think that's right. Then we are, but more importantly, the world is. Okay. The world is. You know, the Vilna Gaon, Rabbi Allouche Vilna, of some 300 years ago, said that he was a mathematician also. And he learned mathematics from the first letter of the Torah, the Bet of Bereshit. I don't know how he did that, but it reminds me of that because, in a way, right, God created designed it or wrote the Torah, and then based on that, he designed the notions of the world and the world itself, mathematics and so on. So every idea in this world and every part of the world can really be rooted in the Torah. I think it's true also, you know, Kabbalah speaks a lot about this. It's true, we find that a lot in the Hebrew language. So the names that are given in Hebrew to the many aspects of this world, for example, stone. The name for stone in Hebrew is Even, right? That's the biblical word for the word stone. We find that when Jacob went to sleep and he had his dream, he took from the stones of the place. The word for stone in Hebrew is, now, through the word stone, God created the actual stone. Through the word stone in the Torah, God created the actual stone. Everything again is written in the Torah. What's interesting is that the word stone also comes from the word boneh. Even comes from the boneh, which means to build. Stones are there in order to build this world. So you actually find that the Hebrew language used in the Torah for all the different aspects of this world also carry within them the purpose of each and every aspect of this world. Stones are to build. That's how the Torah wanted to design the stones. So when it actually...
So the Torah is not full and complete until it manifests.
Until the world itself can connect to the purpose that the Torah gave it. Okay. That's right. Cool. And by the way, you know, or more Kabbalistically, but the letters themselves are also serve the letters of those names that the Torah gave stones and all other materials, also serve as the energy source of the items themselves. So Even, if the word for stone in Hebrew is Even, then those letters, Aleph, Bet, Nun, give that the energy or the sustenance to the stone for it to exist. Even is, and that's why, by the way, when someone, God forbid, is sick, we change his name or we add a name, so that the letters that give us of our name, right, that give us the energy, can be enhanced by the addition of a name. So you can find the connection of this world with the Torah based on the numerical value of names, of items, of different things. That's right. And then you can play with it, but you really have to be a maven to play with it. You can't just... Okay, all right. So going back to this idea that God created the world by looking first at the Torah. The Torah was really the source of this world. I want to continue on with that thought, with the words of Rabbi Stenisalz. Does anyone want to read the next paragraph? Since the Torah expresses the inner will, direction. Yes, please. Go ahead, Sharon. Right. So it's almost God gave us, I would say, a power station with the Torah. Then we have to channel the electricity of the power station to where it needs to go, to cities, to countries, maybe even. Same year, God gave us the Torah on Mount Sinai, and that's the power station of the world. It was meant for the world. It's up to us then to translate that power or to channel that power station to the rest of the world. How do you do so? Each time you communicate the words of Torah to the world, or you even actualize them in the world, then you are actually bringing down the Torah and the purpose for which it was given to the world. You're synchronizing the world and the Torah, and that elevates the world, but it also fulfills the purpose of the Torah. So that's really what he's saying, and I think you can do that either through studying. I think that's why, learning Torah creates an energy around you. I feel it when you go to yeshivas, when you go to places where they study Torah all the time. There's a specific energy there, a very special energy, because it creates this electricity. And same when you go to places of good deeds which are really a translation of God's teachings in the Torah. There's a special energy there. And that's, again, because you're using the electricity of that power station in the best, most effective way. And that's the way really the Torah should be seen. And that, therefore, I want to go back to the point that therefore, there's another story from the Talmud about a certain man by the name of Yanai, who thought of himself as a great scholar. And he once saw someone in the street. Jerusalem Talmud says, Meshupa, like a very distinguished man. Meshupa, shefa, abundant man. And he thought to himself, oh gosh, this must be a VIP. Let me invite him over to my house. I could have a good intellectual discussion with him. So he invites this man over to his house and he serves him a whole lunch. And he says to him, so tell me, teach me anything in Torah. The man says, I don't know a word of Torah. He says, well, then teach me something in the Midrash, in Agada. He says, I don't know a word of the Midrash. He says, maybe you know something in the Mishnah. I don't know a word of the Mishnah. He says, then, okay, then maybe you can bless for us the food and say the Birkat Hamazon in a very special way. The man says, I don't know the blessings. So after lunch, Yanai turns to this man. He says, if that's the case, then please repeat after me in the most disgusting way. He says to him, Brich Rachamana, please repeat after me, blessed is God, the kalba, that a dog, achal mipito shel Yanai, that a dog ate from the bread of Yanai. In other words, you're like a dog. You don't know anything, you're like a dog. That's what he was telling this man. And this man stood up and enraged. He told Yanai, he says, I do know one thing. I do know the verse that says, the Torah tziva lanu Moshe, morasha ki'ilat Yaakov. Torah that Moses commanded us, he received from God, is an inheritance to the entire congregation of Jacob. Does it say that it is the inheritance of Yanai? Or does it say that it is the inheritance of the entire people of Israel? If I don't know Torah, then you have to teach it to me, because it's my heritage just as much as it's yours. How dare you tell me I'm a dog? And I think that's it's a powerful statement that Talmud makes, but to make this point, then we can't keep the power station in the power in the power station. The power in the power station needs to go to the entire world. We can't leave it in one place. It's meant to be the inheritance of all. And if we do try and keep it in one place, in Borough Park or in Bnei Brak or in Williamsburg or you name it, then I think we've betrayed not just these words, but we've betrayed the intention of the giving of the Torah, Mount Sinai. And I think that's the point that Rabbi Stenisalz is making also over here. Yeah, I would say, to make a long answer short, I would say yes. But so there's the Torah as it came to the thought of God. And then there's the Torah as it came to the written word. That's right. Because to connect to the thought is impossible. To connect to the word is possible. It's something tangible. But through connecting to the word, you connect to the thought. It's almost like human beings, right? And in a way, what you're saying, I think Rabbi Stenisalz is going to touch upon this a little bit later, but it's one of the problems we have with Torah. Because, to be a little bit philosophical here, the only way we understand each other as human beings is by the art of extrapolation, right? So when you say pass the salt, I know what you mean by saying pass the salt, because I myself grew up with this idea of what salt is. So I can understand you. So I extrapolate my consciousness and then try and apply it in order to be able to understand you. But when E.T. comes to Earth and says, E.T. phone home, or when E.T. says, pass the salt, he might mean something else, right? Maybe the salt for him is the pepper, not the salt. We don't know. He grew up somewhere else. When God tells us, pass the salt, God also comes from a primordial state. So does he really mean the salt? How do we know that when God says pass the salt, he means the salt? Or to put it more practically, how do we know that when God says honor your father and mother, he means your father and mother? Maybe he wants us to honor our neighbor. How do we know? And therefore the sages made it very clear, Lo dibra Torah ela kilshon bnei adam, that the Torah spoke in the language of human beings, so that we don't start going there. We should know that the Torah spoke in the words of human beings. God gave us, so that's that version of the Torah. The primordial version of the Torah is a different story. But at the end of the day, the sages make that statement also because the Torah again was given to this world for us to actualize it in this world. So when God says salt, he probably means a salt of this world, not a salt of planet Mars. Beautiful, that's right. That's why the Torah applies not just to the past, but applies to the very present.
In the future.
That's right. That's right.
That we're moving.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Applies to every moment, and every moment changes, but every moment has a different calling, a calling that also stems from the calling of the Torah. You're right. Jean-Paul Sartre, who was a French existentialist, says that we don't live every moment, we are revived every moment. Mm-hmm. Every moment we have a new life. So every moment changes. I want to connect this to beautifully said Joyce, but to powerful teaching in the Talmud also, but based on the second paragraph of the Shema. The second paragraph of the Shema that we say every day says, Vaya im shama tishmo en mitzvotai asher anochi metzavecha hayom. If you will listen to my commandments, that I am commanding you hayom, today. 1 second, God commanded us these teachings 3,327 years ago, I believe. Why today? And that's, the Talmud says, Bechol yom yu be'enecha kechadashim. Every day you should view these teachings as new. Every day there's a new aspect, a new dimension, a new realm of the teaching, the same teaching of the Torah that you can apply to this moment. And I think, by the way, it's one of the great teachings that I think our generation, more than ever, needs to hear. We live so much in the past or so much in the future that we forget to really, actualize the blessing of every moment and actualize it in the way the Torah wants us to actualize it. We either are pulled back by grudges, people live in the past because of grudges and other things, or we're such obsessive planners that we even tell children you should go to a good school so that you can get accepted to a good college. Then they go to college, you should do well in college so you can get a good first job. And then you get your first job and you say, you should do well so you can get promoted. And then, you should do well in that promotion so that you can become the CEO. So you're always like living, when do you live? When do you live? And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't plan. It doesn't mean also that there are relationships that are troublesome. But it means that what this means is that you can't allow that to enable you to dismiss moments that have so many blessings. And to live in the moment really means that we're able to tune into what God wants from us at that moment. I'll share with you the thought that I shared in my previous class from Rabbi Mendel Futterfass, one of the great Hasidic Jews that I've met. That he was in a Siberian gulag for 20 years. And he came out, moved to Israel in the 80s. And I remember attending many of these Hasidic gatherings. And during one of these Hasidic gatherings, he turned to someone in the crowd. And he said to that person in the crowd, let me ask you a question. What's the holiest place in the world? And the man says, the holiest place in the world? That's Jerusalem. Yeah, what we have here in the painting, the Holy of Holies. He says, you're wrong. The holiest place in the world is the place you're in right now. He says, let me ask you another question. Who was the holiest person in history? He says, I don't know, Moses. He says, you're wrong. The holiest person in history is you. He says, let me ask you another question. What's the holiest day in the Jewish calendar? He says, Yom Kippur. Today. He says, you're wrong. It's today. This moment is the holiest day. That's the way you should view life. And unfortunately, we're so carried by so many distractions. but we forget to tune into every moment. This is the holiest moment. The place we're in is the holiest place. The person we are. Why? Because they were all designed by the Torah, by God himself. That's the source of this moment. That's the source of this place. It's the source of me. And if I can't tune in to the holiness of the moment, then I will have missed my opportunity to truly actualize the Torah at that moment, at that place, with me, myself. All right. We don't. No, this never ends because we have to take this to the next moment in life. All right. So it is the 23rd, right?
Right.
All right. Absolutely. And you're always welcome to this place for our classes, services, and so on. Please, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Jeanette.